You were born with individual strengths and a unique purpose. Don't let fears, false beliefs, or life's happenings diminish your influence. It's time to live and lead for impact. Host Kirsten Ross, expert of transformation, will help you defeat the drama and overcome the trauma that can stop you in your tracks. You'll gain focus, find confidence, and take bold action. Unleash passionate, purposeful you. Let's go.
Welcome to Live and Lead for Impact. I'm Kirsten Ross, your host, and this is episode number 187. I have a tremendous guest today. Wait until you hear his story. Can't wait. His name is Rick Rassier. So for 20 years, Rick used the Man Volleyball Team platform in school assemblies to challenge students all over the country to set goals and be chemically free. In 2002, he built a challenge course on his property with a 60-foot climbing tower and other high elements. Since 2010, he has taken the training entirely on the road, working with over 250 teams a year. Rick has also been teaching since 1989. His mission in life is simple: challenging people in all walks of life to take their lives to the next level. He has also been passionate about what he does. But when he died 5 years ago, yeah, I said that. That was accurate. For over 27 minutes, his new life theme became "Every minute has a purpose." Welcome, Rick.
Oh, thanks, Kirsten. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining me. And I can't wait to hear more about the Man Volleyball Team. I know when we spoke the other day, you shared a little bit, and I was just so intrigued by that. And then, of course, you are the first person that I have spoken to who can say that they died for 27 minutes.
Not too many people can have that on their resume.
No, not at all. So I don't even know where to start. There's so many different stories. Let's start with the how you died for 27 minutes, and here you are on this podcast. I think that's probably top of mind for everyone who's listening right now.
Maybe, yeah.
How does
Let's
that
get that out of the way. And if they want to hear the whole story, it's kind of ironic, but I just posted a podcast last night called the Greatest Comeback. And it's
great.
about 35 minutes long, and it kind of tells the whole story. But short story, I'm a freestyle kayaker. Picked that up when I turned 50, which is kind of out of the norm, because one of those extreme sports that is pretty physical in nature. It's kind of like gymnastics on the water. You get on wave features on a river, and then you do tricks in these shorter boats. And I went to Wausau Whitewater Park on August 29th, 2015. And I had kind of a crazy schedule prior to that. August is always my busiest month. I work with about 75 teams that month, the last 3 weeks. And operating on 4 or 5 hours of sleep, kind of the perfect storm scenario, running on adrenaline. I love doing what I do. And I think that adrenaline rush from trying to make an impact carries me through, finish the week, went home, spent some time with my family, got up at 4:00 in the morning, 4-hour drive to Wausau, the Whitewater Park. And when I got there, I realized I forgot my dry top, which is, in short form, it's a piece of equipment that you put on, and it keeps the water from getting to your skin. And it was about 45 degrees that morning, windy, overcast, kind of drizzly, rainy. And I thought, oh gosh, all I had was a splash top, but I hit the water anyway. I was on the water for about 2 hours. I was cold. I should have got off the water, because I had already reached the point of diminishing return. I'm 55 years old at that time, and my body was cold, and it's not really responding that well. But I was just determined to nail this one trick called the Phonics Monkey before I got off.
Wait a
Phonics-
minute.
the
Now you're bringing up two. Yeah. What's the Phonics Monkey? And two, what's happening to your body that you're diminishing return, not really working well? Can you go into a little more detail about both of those things?
Well, anybody who's older knows that when your body gets cold, it just doesn't respond. It's just, I'd rather be warm than cold. and I was cold. I mean, I I don't share this too often because my wife says, don't tell people that story. But I was so cold, I even urinated in my boat to try to warm myself up.
Oh my gosh. And this was
Okay.
before or after you were still trying to do this trick?
Well, I was still trying to do the trick, and I looked up at the
Let me buy
shoreline.
myself a little more time.
Yeah. I looked up at the shoreline, and a buddy of mine that I had been paddling with, he was standing up by my truck, and he was wrapped up in a blanket. He had a dry top on, and I thought to myself, "Oh, that looks good." And looked at my watch, 10 more minutes, but I was determined to nail that Phonics Monkey, and that trick is probably one of the higher scoring freestyle tricks. And I don't know if I can paint a picture, but if you're on a wave feature like a foam pile, you think of a
Mhm.
drop in a river where there's a foam pile
Mhm.
created, a white water,
Yeah.
and you're really, in a sense, you're facing upstream because the water, that hydraulic type of
Mm.
motion, holds you into that feature, and
Yeah.
it's retentive. That's what you look for in a whitewater feature, that it holds you in there, and that's a good thing when you know what you're doing. And I was facing upstream, and on a Phonics Monkey, you kind of throw the front of the kayak, the bow of the kayak up, and you kind of edge, so you drop the edge down into the water like you're going to do a cartwheel. But before you do a cartwheel, you do a crossbow stroke. So you reach across your body, put your blade in the water, and it has to be at the right angle. And the power of that water grabs your blade. You throw your hips around and do a complete pirouette in your boat. And then you finish with a loop where you go up and out of the water end over end.
Oh my gosh. All right. So one, my husband's never listening to this episode because he'd probably want to try this.
Well, he's not going to try a
He's
Phonics Monkey for a couple of years, but it's, yeah, most novice or intermediate paddlers don't even know what a Phonics Monkey is. But anyway,
Mm.
I was just determined to nail one before I got off, and I'd been probably trying for a half hour. Anyway, I'm sitting in my boat, and my whole body, I was waiting my turn to get on the river feature. There were 3 other boaters there, and my whole body just went bzzz, and I had a I had a cardiac arrest. It wasn't a heart attack. People get them confused. A heart attack is a circulation issue. A cardiac arrest is kind of like an electrical issue, kind of like grabbing a high voltage line. My body buzzed, and as I was kind of tipping over in my kayak, I remember thinking, "Oh shit!" And that was it. I'm upside
Oh
down
my
in my boat. I didn't
gosh.
take any water in. I wasn't breathing, and yeah, I don't know how much you want me to go into the story, but long story short, I mean, it was amazing that the people there, I mean, there was an ER doctor probably 30 feet from where this happened. There was
Wow.
an EMT person, a nurse, 3 people trained in CPR,
Oh
and
my gosh.
one of the 3 people that was next to me, after a while, I'm upside down my boat, and he's thinking, "Oh, Rick kind of jokes around a little bit. He's just playing with us." Then he said probably 30 seconds went by, and I'm thinking, "Oh, he probably can hold his breath pretty long, but yeah, I hope he's kidding." And then
Mm.
my paddle started floating downstream, and they saw my hands kind of dangling off the side. And
Mm.
he told me, I don't think he said this on my podcast, but he said, "Rick, I was thought he's really doing a good job if he's just pretending. And why would he do that?" And anyway, he tapped on my boat, and then he did this. My boat started floating down into the main current, which was not a good thing. And he did a maneuver called the Hand of God, where you paddle up alongside of somebody upside down in their boat. You reach across with one hand, and then push down on the inside and flip them over. And
Wow.
he went from thinking I was kidding to realizing that he's dead, because my body came up, my head fell back on his shoulders, and
Mm.
I was like a dark blue purple.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, but they did 23 minutes of regular CPR, 4 minutes of CPR from a Lucas device. That's a compression machine. Once the paramedics got there, 7 shocks from an AED.
Mm.
Yeah. And
Wow.
I mean, they forced me to stay in the hospital for 48 hours, and I was back on the water 3 days later.
Oh my gosh.
I always
That's
tell people
tenacity.
my chest was a little bit sore, and I wonder why, like
Yeah.
bumping on my
Oh
chest.
my gosh.
Yeah. It's crazy. It was beyond a miracle. I mean, it's just there's not a day that goes by, you know, without me thinking about it. And that's, yeah, like you had mentioned earlier, my new life theme is every minute has a purpose.
Yeah, and you take advantage of all those minutes. I know it. Yeah, just the fact that that group of people was that close. I mean, an ER doctor, a nurse, an EMT, all these people that have the knowledge to jump into action.
Yes. Yeah, and the ER doctor, he was kind of like in charge of, making sure my head was below the rest of my body, that my brain was getting good blood flow, and monitoring the femoral artery to make sure that the CPR was making an impact. It's just so many things that played a part in bringing me
Yeah.
back.
And the fact that your body would respond. I mean, there were the people there that could give you a fighting chance. But even with that, yeah, that your body responded and all was well.
Yeah, people often ask when they hear a story like that, "What did you have any, encounter? Did you see a light?" And it's kind of ironic, but I didn't see anything, but I heard just about everything that was going on around me.
Now, do you feel like you heard it from your body, or do you feel like you were above your body at any point? You know how people say like sometimes they see themselves, like if they see anything, they look down on their own body.
Well, I feel like I heard it from my body because my body was responding. The EMT lady, she told me, I came back to the same whitewater park 2 weeks later, and she said, "Rick, there was one point that I was kneeling on one of your arms with both of my knees, and you lifted me completely off the ground."
Mm,
And
wow.
there's some French term for it, but they call it CPR induced consciousness. So I didn't have a pulse and I wasn't breathing, but my brain was still working. And that's why I heard a lot of people, "Rick, stick with us. We got you. Keep
Mm,
fighting," that type of thing. And I was in many respects fighting the people that were trying to save me.
yeah. Well, you probably didn't have a lot of like logic going on at that
No.
point. Not a lot of extra capacity for that at that point, I'm sure.
So
Wow.
maybe
Well,
too much information, but yeah, it's something that people certainly are interested in hearing those type of stories, and they're always amazing.
well, no, it's riveting. It's just amazing that you're here, and I'm so grateful. So, the next story is, can we talk a little bit about your one man volleyball team? Because I
Yes,
know you had a lot of success.
and the success was in the fact that it was such a neat platform. It was just a powerful platform to reach kids, and the school assemblies, the eight administration. Oftentimes, I would get such good feedback from them following up some of the programs, how the kids responded to it. So, but it was for
But
20 years.
didn't you also always win?
I played over 8,000 games and I never lost.
I mean, come on. I
Yeah,
mean, yes, let's celebrate your impact, and we're going to talk about that more, but I mean, that is amazing. And share a little bit about some of the teams that you played.
well, I played over 25 state high school champions, some really good college teams, and it got to the point though towards the end where a lot of times I would get calls from schools and I knew that they really weren't interested so much in their message. They wanted to see if their volleyball team could beat me.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of times in the high school setting, I had a lot of respect for some of these teams that, if they won the state tournament, they were good volleyball teams. And I didn't want to get them in front of their whole student body and then have them lose to one guy.
Mhm.
There were a couple situations where the kids would yell out some comments, directed towards the volleyball team, and I was just like, I don't want to be here doing this.
Yeah, you
So,
were doing it to make your impact. That was your way
yes,
of getting their attention so that you could then share the important message.
right. And sometimes I would try to discourage, having just their volleyball team come out, well, and then there were times where I had coaches that were also part of the contact for setting up a program. They said, "Well, you're just afraid to play our volleyball team." I had that happen once, and
Yeah.
and volleyball games back when I was traveling a lot were still, games to 15. Now they play to 25 and it's rally score. But when we played to 15, if you were, the only time you could score is if you were serving. So the one coach, he really stands out in my mind. He was just, well, yeah, you're just afraid to play against our team. And I'm like, when I got there, I was kind of on a mission. I played this. We did 3 school assemblies, for the elementary school, for the middle school, and for the high school. And I played their volleyball team 3 different times, and then I would play a group of teachers. But those 3 games against the volleyball teams, it was 15-0, 15-0, 15-1, and they were
Wow.
state champions.
Yeah. Wow. So you got their attention so that you could have the kids listen to you. So let's talk a little bit. So you've had these just crazy life experiences and success. And let's talk about that impact a little bit more that you're working to make in the world. What is it that you do with teams?
Well, now when I kind of at the end of the volleyball, I was about 50 years old, and I didn't want to be so busy reaching other kids that I miss my own. That's kind of what really motivated me to kind of stop traveling as much as I was. And I was coaching volleyball, and I had brought some of my athletes to some challenge courses. And I thought, wow, what a powerful tool. What a great, tool to reach people with a message and challenge them. And but when we went to these challenge courses, there were people that, they did an okay job facilitating the particular challenge, but they didn't really draw out some of the applications that I saw that were just really powerful. Wow, they could have said this, they could have said that. So I did some research on experiential learning and, challenge courses, and I was told, no way, can't build a challenge course on your property. No homeowners policy will allow that. We moved out to this place. We had 90-foot, white pines, just beautiful trees, and I was determined to build a challenge course there, and we did. And it was just probably one of the best challenge courses in the Midwest. As you mentioned earlier, 60-foot 4-sided climbing tower, 7 other high elements, a 500-yard zip line. We had about 125 teams out there every summer,
Wow.
and then after 7 years, so many coaches were saying, Rick, the stuff that you're doing on the ground is really what's making the impact. The high elements, those things are really fun, but how you're drawing out the learning and the applications to the other activities is really what's making an impact. I do over 150 different activities, depending upon coaches' objectives, issues, or if I'm working with a company, same thing. And I plan a training agenda accordingly. And it's the people love it because they're not really just sitting and listening to somebody talk about something, they're participating in the message. And that's why experiential learning is so powerful. So that's what I do now. 250 to 300 teams a year outside of the COVID
Yeah.
pandemic. So
Yeah. Well, what an impact you've made over the years and will continue to make. It's amazing. So when you look back at such a career of working with so many kids and teams, what one circumstance really stands out for you? Like what's the impact that you make? Like what was the circumstance and what was the response or the shift that you got to see?
oh gosh.
It's probably hard to pick
Yeah.
one.
Well, it's funny because when you ask that question, it just hits me in the heart. And ah, when you know that you make an impact, it's just so it's awesome. I remember, one of the first things that came to mind when you asked that question was going to Wisconsin, a school in Wisconsin, doing the one man volleyball show. And I came back from Menominee, Wisconsin that day. And then 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail. And it was from a girl that was at this program. And she told me it was a long letter. She told me a lot about her life. Had an abusive father, But she told me that she had planned to commit suicide after school that day.
Mm.
And she, went on to talk about how my message really hit her and really gave her some hope. And it was just really cool. And I had some correspondence with her afterwards. But I mean, gosh, when you hear from kids and how maybe you change your life or help them make some better choices, it's powerful. When you
Yeah.
know that you make an impact. And when I died and came back, now my philosophy really is, you know, every day I work with a team or, even teaching. I teach elementary phy ed. I've been teaching 31 years. All I do is play all day. But even that, just the opportunity to make an impact on those kids' lives, that they would choose a fitness lifestyle because of Mr. Rassier, or be drug free. My elementary kids line up at the door after a 25-minute class period, and I'll say, "Attention." And they all slap their hands along their side, and I'll yell out, "Drug free." And they all answer in unison, "Drug free, yes, sir." And they give me this salute.
Mm.
Well, I have a little girl named Jocelyn this year. Her mom emailed me, and she talked about how she, had me when she was in elementary school. And she said, "Rick, do you have any idea what I do?" In this email. And I answered her back. And then she asked for my phone number. She called me and she said, "Rick, I'm a chemical health counselor, and I'm a chemical health counselor because of you."
Oh, wow.
And I mean, I just started crying. I mean, I just
Yeah.
got all welled up because you never know when you're making an impact. But
Right.
I just feel so blessed. I mean, for lack of better terms, so blessed to have so many opportunities, whether it's teaching, whether it's working with teams, whether it's working with companies. I worked with a cleaning company, one of the bigger cleaning companies in Minnesota a few years ago, where I did a keynote presentation. And yeah, it was maybe 2 years later, and I'm at this old country buffet. I eat a lot. I probably eat 5 to 7,000 calories a day. So it's a great place for me. And I had this guy come up to me and he said, "Rick," he said, "you would never know me. I was just in the audience, but you gave this keynote presentation at this seminar and it changed my life." He said, I said, "Well, how did it change your life?" And he said, "Well, you wouldn't have recognized me back then." And he said that he had lost over 125 pounds.
Wow. Aw. Isn't that
And
so nice to know that you helped that person?
yeah, well, and my
Yeah.
my big thing, and talk about motivation. It's an
Mm-hmm.
interesting thing. It really is. And in the beginning, you said talking about challenging people to take their life to the next level. Well, I probably give about 4,000 t-shirts away in schools. They say take it to the next level. And underneath that, it says celebrate progress.
Mm.
Celebrate progress. And I talk about how that is really the missing link to sustaining a high level of motivation. We live in a society where people are really good. Kids are really good at comparing themselves with other people. Well, don't worry where anybody else is at. Just, get that mindset where you're trying to get a little bit better today than you were yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Progress, make little steps and build on that success. And that creates momentum and enthusiasm when you truly learn to celebrate progress.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like in sports, for example, kids, I mean, when I ask a team this, they fill in the blank. I'll say, don't believe the biggest lie in sports. The biggest lie in sports is people think that the only time you should celebrate is if you win, they fill in the blank, and if you're the best. Don't believe that. Just celebrate progress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it brings to mind years ago someone was interviewing me and they asked me what my definition of success was, and like when you think about it initially it seems like a super simple answer. But then I was like, well, wait a minute, there's lots of different ways to define it. And so since then, it was the first time that I took a moment to think about it. I was like, you know what? It is, you have to have a blend of discontent, because that's that like continuing the motivation forward, so you don't want to have that now what feeling, because you've achieved everything, right? So like the astronauts, that big letdown that they have afterwards, like, wow, I have this huge accomplishment. Now what? So you need a little bit of that, but you don't want only that. And then the success piece, same thing. You want to be celebrating all along the way. But again, you can't have all celebration, because then, you're missing the little bit of discontent that pushes you forward. So it's
Yeah.
like that nice blend of the two. So, celebrate, but motivation to keep moving forward.
Well, and it's fun to see that with some of the groups that I work with, and in that satisfaction, that's an interesting word. I always say that satisfaction is one of the scariest words in the English language. A lot of times people have no idea what they could accomplish because they get satisfied and complacent. I
Mm-hmm.
did, I remember about 8, 9 years ago, I worked with a college men's basketball team. And oftentimes when I work with a team, you know, college athletes, high school athletes, especially guys, when they hear, and sometimes they hear just, well, we're going to do some team building. And sometimes people, when they hear team building, they think, what are we going to do? Sit around a circle, hold hands, and sing Kumbaya for 2.5 hours?
Right.
That's kind of what they envision. But I do some activities that are kind of competitive in nature and maybe a little bit against each other, but within your own group. In the group, what I did with this basketball team, I call the activity popcorn. I have a big container of maybe 75 wiffle balls,
Mm-hmm.
and I dump the container against the wall. Have them stand maybe 30, 45 feet from the wall. And I tell them, I'm going to dump the balls against the wall, and then I'm going to time you and see how fast you can pick them up and put them back into the container. The container stays right here. Can't bring the container over to the wall. The only rule is you can't move with the ball. So you can pick up a ball and get rid of it, but you cannot move with the ball. So that you can't all run over there, pick them all up, put them in your shirts, and then run back. You got to get them from there into here without moving with the ball. Well, it's funny to watch these guys. Basically they're all fired up about cleaning the room, cleaning up the gym.
Mm-hmm.
So this particular basketball team, there were 16 guys. I dumped the balls out for them 18 times. 18 times. And I mean, every time they got a little bit better, and they're chest butting each other, jumping up, grabbing the rim, hanging like monkeys, celebrating progress, oh, big time. But they weren't satisfied. And sometimes I've worked with a group where, they had a time that was maybe 5 times slower than this basketball team, and the basketball team had fewer guys, and nobody even said anything about doing it again. Normally I work with a group that somebody's going to say, well, let's do it again, we can beat that score. Well, these guys, there wasn't I never had to ask, let's do it again, again,
Yeah.
again, again. Well, I told the coach afterwards, I said, you're going to have a team beyond what you expect with them, because he had told me prior to this session it's kind of a rebuilding year. We lost 4 starters from the previous season, and when I told him he's going to have a season beyond what he expected, he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, because of that wiffle ball challenge, they're never satisfied. They always knew they could do it a little bit better. Well, that team ended up going on and winning a national championship in their division, first
Wow.
time from that school that anybody ever won. And it's just, but it's just cool because it's that type of mindset that they were never
They were
satisfied. They were
hungry. Yeah.
hungry. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Awesome. So tell me, what words of wisdom do you have for others who want to make their own impact in the world?
Got to be from the heart. Got to be from the heart. I think that's, people can tell. If you want to make an impact, I mean, it's got to come from the heart and have the right motives and really want to change people's lives. That's what it's all about. Yeah. The volleyball started, it's kind of interesting. I got a call from a guy from Fort Hope, Ontario. He was doing some missions work in this village, for lack of a better term, in Fort Hope was, uh, could have been called Fort Despair. Alcoholism, use of other drugs is just rampant. And he called me up and he asked me, whether I knew some volleyball guys that would come up and do some ministry. And I said, well, yeah, I know some guys, but a lot of them, they have full-time jobs and it'd be hard for them to get off. And I told him, I said, Bill, I could come up by myself. And he kind of laughed. He thought I was kidding. And I went up, long story short, I was on the phone for him probably a half hour talking about it. And I had to tell him some stories just to convince him that it could work. And then he said, well, it's a big problem because it's pretty expensive to fly in. And I said, well, if it's going to work, it's going to work. And probably 5 minutes after I got off the phone with him, somebody came to my door and asked me some questions related to what I was doing with kids in St. Cloud area where I live, and any other opportunities. I told him about this opportunity in Fort Hope, and he wrote out a check for the amount of the airfare and the travel. And I was up there, and I was up there for 4 or 5 days, and I was just excited about making an impact. Well, by the time by the last day I was there, the whole village came down to watch me play volleyball and share a message. And the next morning, I remember being in this in the summer they play volleyball, in the winter they play hockey, and I was in this hockey rink outside. There's no ice there. It was a nice hot day, and I'm sitting there, and it just overpowered me, really. I was just overwhelmed with the thought that I was going to be able to use this as a platform to reach people. And not for anything but that impact. I don't know. Sometimes people can have, I don't know, it's not like false motives, but they want to make an impact, but they want to make a name for themselves in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just been so grateful to be able to do it. I really feel for the right reasons, and because it's from the heart that you really want to change people's lives. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, from the heart, that's what's going to keep you fueled with passion.
Yes.
That if you are doing it for some other motives, there's going to be a lot more frustration and overwhelm and resignation and all those kind of other kind of more negative emotions that you don't want to have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very, very well said. I mean, all the stuff that you need to do to set up opportunities would feel like work if your heart's not in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if your heart is aligned, I mean, I always say passion is the litmus test that tells us that we're heading in the right direction. And, because we are given gifts to use in the service of others. And, and whether that's your vocation or something that you do voluntarily, um, you know, but figure it out. And passion, that fuel is, that's our little message that says, yep, you're doing the right thing.
I like that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for spending time with me tonight and sharing all your wonderful stories and for the great impact that you're making. I know that your impact far surpasses probably anything that we can imagine. Just all the lives that you've touched with all of your work for so many years, from teaching to, the volleyball stuff and all the things in between. So, I just thank you for the impact that you're making. And I just feel privileged to have you on the podcast for you to share all your stories. And I'm so grateful that the right people were in the right place for your 27 minutes.
Yes, definitely.
So
Well,
I want to, go ahead.
I just wanted to say thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed this. And I think, obviously your program, what you're doing is making an impact too, because it's going to inspire and motivate other people to do the same.
Well,
So,
that's what I hope. That's what I hope. So I want to encourage everyone who's out there to reach out to Rick. If you have a team, whether it's a corporate team, an athletic team, he has amazing services to provide to help ramp up your team, and also just the motivation and the message that he has for teens is so important right now. I mean, especially right now. I mean, this has been a
yeah,
tough year for everyone, and let's keep those good positive messages going. So his website is Rick Rassier. Oh my goodness, rickrassier.weebly.com. So that's RickRassier.weebly, WEEBLY.com. And that link will be on the show notes for today's episode. So you can find that by going to defeatthedrama.com, click on the podcast site, and go to episode 187. And if you're struggling with any kind of challenge right now, whether it's trying to make your impact, something going on in your business, please reach out. I am here to help. I can get you a breakthrough within 15 minutes, and I've got some spots left on my calendar. Go to defeatthedrama.com/call, grab your spot, and let's get you some clarity and some focus and some strategies to get you where you want to be. So until next time, get out there, make your bigger, bolder impact, and make it a great day.